Okay, you can see with today's comic, I've gone for a very painterly kind of style with the last panel. A big reason for that was because I wanted to give it a very wedding day feeling, almost like when you look back at like a fond memory, it's got this hazy, almost hyper real quality to it. And I don't know if that's intentionally what I was going for, but I think maybe subconsciously that's what I wanted to achieve. Because what kind of helped with that was the fact that I drew the last panel without any panel borders. It meant that it kind of lent itself to going for this kind of gradient, kind of a hazy kind of quality to the edges of the colors. As for how the colors came out the way they did, as with a lot of my comics, it's just um, sheer experimentation. Like I lay down some base colors and I just keep toying with them and toying with them and toying with them until I get a result I want. Like I wish I could say I went in with a precise plan of how I want everything to look, because do you know what? It would make things much quicker for me. But no, in a lot of cases, and especially in this case, I just laid colors down until yeah, and messed around with them until I got the results I wanted, or at least the results I liked. So with that last panel, I very much wanted to go for, again, as with a lot of my recent comics, I wanted to go for colors that you wouldn't necessarily think of straight away when it comes to this kind of a scene. I mean, for example, if you look at my at the typed up process post, I've included the photograph I used as a reference for that last panel, and it's a fair approximation in terms of the drawing of what you see in that photograph, but the colors here like are completely different. Like I was thinking of having the photograph open in front of me while I worked on the colors, but I was worried that if I did that, I'd end up with uh, a very boring looking image, because I find things that work in real life don't necessarily work in an illustration. It's like how when you look at, let's just say, if when you look at a tree, the bark of a tree, when you look at that, your brain probably, and my brain does it a lot too, your brain probably just sees it as brown and darker brown, because of the lighting and whatnot. However, you'll often find in nature that you'll see lots of purples and like pinks and blues and things in shadows, and I kind of wanted to go for that um, in that last panel. I wanted to go for colors that you wouldn't necessarily think this would work, but sometimes they are the colors that work. Um, Now, again, that implies that I had a plan with what I was doing with the last panel. I absolutely did not. What you see is just the result of lots of tinkering with color sliders and whatnot. I mean, that last panel, by far, the background elements, that was what I spent the most time working on with this comic, because everything else, like you look at a Bond, he's Bride, and the backgrounds in the first two panels, it's all flats, basically. And overall, I'm quite pleased with how this one turned out. And the the thing I like to do with my comics is, even when I'm doing a really stupid pun like this, I I still like the imagery to look nice, because, and it's not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I think if you're going to do like a, a bad pun, and things like that, that's okay, but you need something else to really have it hit home. To really make the reader kind of sit up and note and take notice. And I think having a really nice looking comic is is important. It is important. Um, and like that's not to say that every comic needs to look absolutely perfect, but pardon me for a sec. But you should at the very least try to do your best with what you're doing, or at least try your best. Um, because it's nice to make something visually distinctive and nice looking, something that really stands out as a result. And so that's kind of my thought process with my comics, where even though they're just silly gags a lot of the time, the the main focus of the comic for me wouldn't be the gag. It would be how I tell the gag and how I get that gag across, and how the visuals work, um, along with that gag. Because I mean, you see a lot of web comics where the visuals almost take like a backseat to the gag itself, and I think that's doing a disservice to the readers and to the medium itself. Like, comics are obviously a very visual medium, and I just think it's important to have the visuals do a lot of the work, and have the written gag, like the actual dialogue, have the written gag be, working in tandem with the art, but not being the main focus of the comic, if you know what I mean. So, on that note, I think I've rambled on long enough. So, look, I will leave it at that, and I will talk to you at the next video. Take care.